Mu Feng and his group exchanged glances upon seeing the composed, smiling young man before them. There was a flicker of surprise in their eyes, mixed with uncertainty. Even experienced individuals like them had failed to find a solution. Could this boy really handle it? Then tell us your plan. If you're just spouting nonsense, I won't let you off easy, Mu Feng said with a smile. Mu Chen fixed his gaze on the vast black poison swamp ahead and explained, "This swamp is impassable even for birds. The moment one steps onto it, they sink and become trapped. The death miasma in the air prevents flight as well. Using floating objects as stepping stones might help, but before long, the countless black poison crocodiles in the swamp will drag anyone down and tear them apart." "We already know that," Mu Feng said with a laugh and a curse. "Actually, crossing isn't that difficult. What creatures can move freely through this swamp?" Mu Chen asked with a grin. "Move freely?" Mu Feng was momentarily stunned. After a brief thought, he said, "The black poison crocodiles?" "Exactly. If we capture some and use their hides to make rafts, we can travel through the swamp unimpeded. The scent of their hides will also keep the other crocodiles from attacking us," Mu Chen explained. "That's simple?" Mu Feng and his group frowned. It didn't sound too difficult, but could it really get them through the swamp? While the crocodile hides might help, it was hard to believe they'd ensure absolute safety. "Haha, of course, there's one more step," Mu Chen chuckled. The black poison crocodiles weren't highly intelligent, but they weren't so easily fooled either. As for that final step, let's first deal with the initial part. "Father, Uncle Zhou, I'll leave the crocodile hunting to you." Everyone looked at each other, still unsure what Mu Chen was planning. "You brat, you'd better not mess this up." Mu Feng gritted his teeth. They didn't have many options left, and time was running out. If they delayed too long, Lu Domaine's forces would pull too far ahead. "Zhou Yi, let's move. The rest of you, prepare to make the rafts," Mu Feng ordered with a wave of his hand. "Yes." Although the others were skeptical of Mu Chen's plan, since Mu Feng had given the order, they obeyed immediately. They scattered and began cutting down trees. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi exchanged glances. Powerful spiritual energy erupted from their bodies. Mu Feng's figure flickered, appearing in midair above the black poison swamp. A surge of fiery red spiritual energy burst from his back, transforming into a massive flame dragon carving. The flame dragon carving was covered in crimson scales, its wings resembling those of a dragon, radiating raw power. A wave of spiritual pressure spread from it, causing the swamp below to churn. One by one, ferocious black poison crocodiles emerged, their eyes filled with fear and wariness as they gazed up at the fiery beast. Roar! Zhou Yi also hovered in the air, and behind him, a mountain rhinoceros the size of a small mountain materialized. Its sheer weight seemed to shake the very air around it. Those who refined a spirit beast essence at the divine soul stage would inherit certain traits and abilities of the beast they fused with. Mu Feng's flame dragon carving granted him exceptional speed, while Zhou Ye's mountain rhinoceros endowed him with pure, overwhelming strength. Mu Chen's eyes gleamed with admiration as he watched the imposing spirit beasts behind Mu Feng and Zhou Yi. The divine soul stage was truly formidable, far surpassing the spirit will stage. Zhou Yi clenched his fist and let out a low growl before punching forward. A deep yellow spiritual energy shot out like a pillar of light, carrying the crushing weight of a mountain as it blasted into the swamp. Boom! The ground trembled violently as a massive crater formed in the swamp. A powerful shockwave erupted, sending over a dozen black poison crocodiles flying. At that moment, Mu Feng also made his move. The flame dragon carving behind him let out a thunderous screech, unleashing a torrential blaze that engulfed the airborne crocodiles. Crack! The surge of spiritual energy crushed the crocodiles instantly. Their bodies, comparable to spirit wheel stage experts, were rendered lifeless in an instant. Mu Feng then waved his hand, tossing the corpses toward the swamp's edge. Meanwhile, on a cliffside passage some distance from the black poison swamp, another group had come to a halt. It was the Lu Domain forces, who Mu Feng's group had encountered earlier. This spiritual energy disturbance. Lu Zong paused in his steps and looked into the distance. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi. It seems they've run into some trouble. They're probably stuck at the black poison swamp right now, Lu Qingtian said with a faint smile. With Mu Feng and Zhou Yi's strength, they could force their way through, but it would drain them significantly. As for the rest of their group, they don't stand a chance. If that's the case, by the time they reach the depths of the dark abyss, they'll be nothing but a battered force. Still, Big Brother is thoughtful. If the opportunity arises, we shouldn't let those two escape. Once Mu Domain loses Mu Feng and Zhou Yi, wouldn't that make it easy for us and Lu Domain to take control? Lu Ming sneered. Lu Qingtian nodded with a faint smile, a flicker of killing intent flashing in his eyes. If that chance came, he certainly wouldn't let them go. For now, they only needed to wait deep within the dark abyss for Mu Domain's remaining forces, exhausted by the torment of the black poison swamp, to appear. Mu Feng, living a comfortable life in Mu Domain. Yet he comes to fight us in Lu Domain over the 9 Nether Sparrow. Well, he can't blame me for that. Boom. The ground trembled. Mu Chen looked at the dozen or so black poison crocodiles that Mu Feng had thrown his way, clicking his tongue. Each of these crocodiles was at the early spirit wheel stage, but in the hands of his father and Uncle Zhou, they barely put up any resistance. Mu Chen admired them for a moment before calling over some skilled hands to strip the crocodile skins. Meanwhile, the makeshift boat was ready, so Mu Chen instructed them to wrap the crocodile hides around it. If they just tossed the boat into the black poison swamp, it would likely sink immediately. But the residual spiritual energy in the crocodile hides was just enough to make the boat float on the swamp's surface. After the work was done, everyone looked toward Mu Chen, wondering if this method could really get them across the black poison swamp. Your turn, Mu Feng said, looking at Mu Chen, his expression turning serious. Don't mess this up. If we run into trouble in the black poison swamp, there won't be many left alive. Don't worry, Dad. Mu Chen smiled, then pointed at the swamp. Our main concern is avoiding the black poison crocodile's attacks. They are a type of intermediate spirit beast. Because they've lived in the swamp for so long, their senses are poor and their vision isn't sharp. As long as we disrupt their sight and use the scent of these crocodile skins, we can slip right past them. How do we disrupt their sight? Mu Feng frowned. Thanks to you letting me study spirit arrays these past days. Mu Chen smiled slightly, then clenched his palm. 8 spirit seals appeared on his fingertips. You can already set up spirit arrays? Mu Feng and Zhou Yi were both surprised, their eyes wide. The rest of Mu Domain's people also stared at Mu Chen in astonishment. Just a minor spirit array. Mu Chen smiled, then said, the array I'm setting up is called the confusion array. It has a confusing effect. While it won't have much of an impact, it's perfect for dealing with these black poison crocodiles with poor senses. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi exchanged glances, stunned that Mu Chen seemed even more experienced with spirit beasts than they were. Mu Chen didn't pay them any more attention. His face grew serious, and with a flick of his fingers, the 8 spirit seals disappeared around the boat. The air around it subtly rippled, releasing a strange energy. Mu Chen's hand gestures changed, and after a moment, he finally let out a breath, wiping the sweat from his forehead. All right. Everyone quickly turned their eyes to the boat. Sure enough, they saw a faint mist enveloping it, obscuring everything inside. This cover would be easy for a human to see through, but fortunately, the black poison crocodiles didn't have such high intelligence. The young master really is hiding his talents, Duan Wei, and the others couldn't help but admire. They had always seen Mu Chen as a young man, but now they realized that this so-called young man was no simple figure. Though they weren't entirely sure if this method would work, the way things were going did give them some confidence. Why praise so early? It's only useful if it works. Otherwise, it's all for nothing and could end up causing trouble, Mu Feng said with a slight smile at the corner of his mouth, though he still refrained from offering too much praise, lest it get to Mu Chen's head. Time will tell, Mu Chen muttered, rolling his eyes. He then pushed the boat into the black poison swamp and jumped aboard. Splash! At this moment, on the desolate black poison swamp, a small boat wrapped in black poison crocodile skin was cautiously moving forward. On the boat, everyone was tense, not daring to make a sound. Their eyes were fixed on the surrounding swamp, their spiritual energy quietly flowing within them. This group of people had naturally followed Mu Chen's plan. The ones from Mu Domain, who had charged into the black poison swamp, had gained some confidence from Mu Chen's assurance. However, no matter how confident Mu Chen appeared, the feeling of being in a desperate situation, where one wrong move could lead to being swallowed by the swamp, was far from pleasant. Compared to their tension, Mu Chen seemed calm, though his gaze was still fixed on the surroundings. The boat was carrying many skilled people from Mu Domain. Losing them here would be a huge blow to Mu Domain. Mu Feng stood beside Mu Chen. His face appeared indifferent, yet there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. His body was tense, ready to act at any moment if danger arose. As the boat slowly advanced, signs of movement began to appear in the swamp. The black, toxic mud churned, and fierce black poison crocodiles floated on the surface, slowly swimming toward the boat. Upon seeing this, the people on the boat felt their hearts race. The sound of their heartbeats seemed to quicken. In the tense silence on the boat, dozens of black poison crocodiles surrounded them, their crimson eyes glaring menacingly through the black mud. Everyone's heart tightened. Under Mu Chen's control, the boat maintained a steady pace, silently gliding through the swamp. Mu Feng and the others finally relaxed when they realized the black poison crocodiles did not attack. From the crocodiles' red eyes, they could vaguely sense confusion and hesitation. It was clear that the low-intelligence crocodiles could sense something was wrong, but they couldn't pinpoint the source of their unease. Eventually, the boat managed to pass through the encirclement of the black poison crocodiles. However, the passengers remained silent, not daring to breathe freely. Only half an hour later, when they saw the edge of the swamp, did they exhale the tension that had been building in their chests. Hey, we actually made it through. The young master is really impressive. The atmosphere on the boat lightened, and Duan Wei and the others praised Mu Chen with smiles. How about that, old man? Didn't embarrass you, did I? Mu Chen secretly relaxed and clapped his hands, smiling at Mu Feng. You brat. Mu Feng chuckled with a scolding tone, though his eyes couldn't hide the sense of pride. This kid had finally grown up. He could now help share the burden. No longer just a son, but someone who could lighten his load after all these years of raising him. Little Mu really is different now, Zhou Yu remarked. Since Mu Chen returned from the spirit road, he had changed drastically. If he was once a clever, somewhat talented boy, now he was truly capable of shouldering some responsibility. Mu Feng nodded slightly, rubbing Mu Chen's head. He then swiftly leaped to the edge of the swamp and said, "Let's speed up. Otherwise, we'll fall too far behind Lu Domain." "Yes." Duan Wei and the others responded, making their way onto land, quickly organizing themselves. They maintained vigilance and began speeding toward the depths of the dark abyss. As Mu Feng and the others crossed the black poison swamp, heading toward the dark abyss, a pair of cold eyes on a distant mountain wall observed them from above. These guys actually made it through the black poison swamp unharmed. How is that possible? Lu Ming's face turned a dark shade as he gazed at the distant figures. It seems Mu Domain really came prepared. Lu Zong frowned. He had initially planned to wait for Mu Domain's forces to be exhausted by the swamp before taking advantage of the situation, but now they had come through effortlessly. A cold glint flashed in Lu Qingtian's eyes. The more prepared Mu Domain was, the greater the obstacle they became. These people had to be eliminated. The 9 Nether Sparrow had to belong to Lu Domain. With it, Lu Domain could become the true ruler of the Northern Spirit Realm, and Lu Qingtian would no longer be a mere domain lord, but the supreme ruler of the entire Northern Spirit Realm. Big brother, what should we do now? Lu Ming asked. From the looks of it, the forces of Mu Domain were almost upon them. Don't rush, Lu Qingtian replied with a faint smile. How long have we been preparing for this plan? The Dark Abyss has long been within our detection range. Mu Domain, with their bloodshot eyes, thinks they can charge at us and fight? As he spoke, he glanced deep into the Dark Abyss, a cold glint flickering in his eyes. Let's go. When we get there, I have a grand surprise prepared for them. As they ventured deeper into the Dark Abyss, Mu Feng and his group grew more cautious. In this area, traces of advanced spirit beasts could be found. If these vicious creatures took notice of them, it would definitely be troublesome. They still had to keep an eye on Lu Domaine's forces. The team quietly passed through the dark forest. Even when they encountered some spirit beasts, they did not dare to strike easily. Instead, they carefully bypassed them and quickly moved on. After half an hour of trekking, they finally emerged from the forest, only to be confronted by steep cliffs and deep cracks in the Black Mountains, like the gaping maw of a demon. Mu Feng furrowed his brows as they gazed at the dark chasm ahead. There was a serious look in their eyes. "We're getting closer to the heart of the dark abyss," Mu Feng murmured. "This area is the true dark abyss, where advanced spirit beasts dwell." Advanced spirit beasts. Duan Wei and the others' expressions tightened. Such beasts were comparable to divine soul stage experts. "We won't hunt any spirit beasts along the way. These advanced spirit beasts are bloodthirsty, and even the slightest trace of blood can attract them. If more than 2 of them come after us, we'll face dire consequences." Mu Chen nodded in agreement. Compared to the northern spirit wilderness, this place was far more dangerous. "Let's move, but stay alert," Mu Feng ordered, signaling for them to proceed. With a wave of his hand, Mu Feng led the charge, darting into the dark, massive crack in the mountain. Behind him, Mu Chun, Zhou Yi, and the others followed cautiously. Deep in the dark abyss, the atmosphere was perpetually gloomy and damp, shrouded by a deadly miasma. Occasionally, distant growls could be heard, filled with a hunger for blood. The group moved carefully through the shadows, avoiding any sign of spirit beasts. Mu Chen could sense that both Mu Feng and Zhou Yi had their spiritual energy at the ready, prepared for any sudden dangers. They proceeded without encountering any obstacles, and the relief among Duan Wei and the others was palpable. At this rate, they would soon reach the deepest part of the dark abyss. However, unlike them, Mu Chun felt a slight frown form on his face. This smooth progress made him uneasy. As they rounded a bend in the mountain path, Mu Chun exchanged a brief glance with Mu Feng. From his eyes, Mu Chun could tell that Mu Feng shared his suspicion. The path opened up, revealing a vast, rocky clearing. This area lay at the junction of 3 towering peaks, surrounded by steep cliffs on all sides. Mu Feng's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he sharply lifted his head, his gaze fixed on a hidden crevice in the cliff. There, figures slowly appeared. "He, Mu Feng, you really aren't slow." Lu Qingtian's voice floated down from the cliff above, accompanied by a faint smile. "It's Lu Domaine's people. Be careful," Zhou Yi shouted, his spiritual energy surging within him. "Lu Qingtian, what do you want?" Mu Feng growled. Lu Domaine seemed to know everything about the dark abyss, while they were completely in the dark. This made them feel incredibly passive. "You look so cautious, it's a bit unpleasant." "So, I thought I'd give you something to do," Lu Qing'an chuckled, though his smile was cruel. With a wave of his hand, his people tossed down large jars. Boom, boom. The jars exploded upon hitting the ground, and thick, crimson blood spread across the ground. Seeing this scene, Mu Feng and the others immediately turned pale. "It seems the beast blood alone isn't very effective," Lu Qingtian muttered, sniffing the scent of blood. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, with a flick of his robe, dozens of elite fighters from the Lu domain were sent flying, their blood-curdling screams echoing through the air. Boom! Lu Qingtian's expression remained unchanged as he flicked his finger, and several beams of spiritual energy shot out, violently crashing into the bodies of those dozen people. Bang! A dull, thunderous sound rang out as the dozen men exploded in midair, their bodies disintegrating into a blood mist that rained down. The scene was incredibly gruesome. Mu Feng and the others' expressions darkened. Roar! Just as their faces grew somber, deep within the dark abyss, several low, guttural roars suddenly echoed. These roars were filled with violent spiritual energy fluctuations. Advanced spirit beasts. Mu Feng's face turned ashen. Lu Qingtian's methods were indeed ruthless. Roar! As the bloodthirsty roars echoed from afar, Mu Feng, Zhou Yi, and the others' faces turned grim. This time, It seemed they had truly walked into a trap set by the Lu domain. Mu Feng, how do you like this gift? Lu Qingtian looked down at Mu Feng and the others with a faint, mocking smile. How long have we in the Lu domain been planning for the Nine Nether Sparrow? Do you really think that just because you obtain some information, you have the right to compete with us? Well, since you're here, you're here. You'll pay the price. Consider it a lesson. Mu Feng's eyes were cold as he glared at Lu Qingtian, but he had no time to argue. His gaze flickered as he racked his brain for a solution. The spiritual energy fluctuations from those roars earlier definitely came from advanced spirit beasts. If they were entangled with these beasts, even if they managed to defeat them, they would suffer significant energy depletion and potential injuries. At that point, Lu Qingtian and his men would undoubtedly seize the opportunity. But if they retreated now, they would be playing right into the Lu domain's hands. The Lu domain would then be able to hunt down the Nine Nether Sparrow without any obstacles, and if they succeeded, it would be a huge threat to the Mu domain. This predicament was forcing them into a tough spot. What should we do now? Zhou Yi couldn't help but ask. Let's observe the situation first, Mu Feng replied, his face ashen. Mu Chen, standing beside him, furrowed his brow. The people of the Lu domain were truly annoying, always setting obstacles in their path. Roar. As the Mu domain forces remained on high alert, another beastly roar echoed from afar, followed by the sharp sound of wind slicing through the air. Quickly, 3 streaks of light appeared, rushing out from the depths of the dark abyss and quickly arriving around the mountain walls. 3 advanced spirit beasts. Seeing those 3 streaks of light, Mu Feng gritted his teeth. Under the tense gazes of the crowd, the 3 streaks of light quickly revealed their massive forms. In their blood-red eyes, there was nothing but bloodlust and savagery. On the left mountain wall, there stood a gigantic blood-red lion, with sharp purple wings on its back, exuding a majestic aura. On the right mountain wall was a massive black beast, its body resembling something forged from steel. As the sunlight glinted off its form, it shimmered with a blinding light. Its streamlined shape gave the impression of a killing machine. Purple-winged lion. Black iron beast. Duan Wei and the others' expressions changed at the sight of these 2 beasts, their voices full of surprise. These were indeed advanced spirit beasts, and they likely possessed the strength of the early divine soul stage. That is the flame water crane. Mu Feng's gaze shifted from the 2 advanced spirit beasts to the last one, and his eyes narrowed. It was a gigantic black crane. One of its wings was a flowing blue, resembling water, while the other was a fiery red, like flames. As it flapped its wings, water and fire surged together in a dazzling display. However, beneath this beauty lay a deadly force. The flame water crane was the strongest of the 3, having reached the mid-divine soul stage. Mu Feng, it seems your luck is quite poor. You even managed to attract the flame water crane. Looks like we're in for a wonderful show of humans and beasts fighting, Lu Qingtian said with a smile, watching the scene unfold. Then, with a wave of his hand, his forces disappeared into the cliffs. Son of A.B. Zhou Yi gritted his teeth, his eyes burning with fury. Domain Lord, what should we do now? If we fight these 3 advanced spirit beasts, even if we manage to defeat them, Lu Domain will likely exploit the opportunity and launch a sneak attack on us, Duan Wei said, a hint of worry flashing across his eyes. Mu Feng's expression darkened. The 3 advanced spirit beasts had locked onto them now, and if they didn't fight, they'd have to retreat. But retreating at this moment was something he wasn't willing to do. Duan Wei and the others saw Mu Feng's eyes flicker, but they dared not interrupt him. They could only focus on the 3 advanced spirit beasts, who were clearly eager to strike, their palms slick with cold sweat. Mu Chen also understood their predicament. He furrowed his brows, thoughts racing through his mind. After a brief moment, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a glimmer seemed to flash across his dark, night sky-like gaze. Father, Mu Chen spoke softly. Mu Feng responded absently, a frown etched on his face, clearly frustrated and tired. Can you and Uncle Zhou hold off these 3 advanced spirit beasts? Mu Chen asked. Mu Feng glanced at him, then nodded helplessly. We can, but it'll consume a lot of energy. Once our strength wanes, Lu Qingtian will definitely take action. You don't need to kill them, just hold them off. Don't exhaust yourselves too much, Mu Chen said. That won't do us any good either, Mu Feng frowned. If we can't kill these 3 advanced spirit beasts, we'll have no choice but to retreat. I have a way to deal with them, Mu Chen hesitated before speaking. Mu Feng froze for a moment, then stared at Mu Chen in shock. Zhou Yi and the others also looked at him, their expressions filled with disbelief. These were 3 advanced spirit beasts, comparable to 3 divine soul stage experts. How could Mu Chen, at the late spirit movement stage, possibly deal with them? It's not always about using brute force, Mu Chen smirked, rolling his eyes. There's something called using momentum. It's my favorite trick, and it's saved me countless times in the spirit road. What exactly are you planning to do? Mu Feng couldn't help but ask. Could this kid really have a plan? There's no time to explain. You hold them off, and I'll prepare. Mu Chen glanced at the 3 advanced spirit beasts, poised to attack at any moment. He couldn't explain further and urged them to act quickly. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi exchanged a look, then clenched their teeth and nodded. Mu Chen had earned their trust. If he said so, he likely had something up his sleeve. We'll leave it to you. Without wasting any more time, Mu Chen turned and dashed out, disappearing in a blur. Someone's running? Lu Qingtian and the others, who had been watching Mu Feng and the others, frowned upon seeing Mu Chen escape. It's Mu Chen. What is he trying to do? Is he planning to run away by himself? Lu Mubai muttered in confusion. For some reason, he always felt uneasy about Mu Chen. Forget him. A kid in the late spirit movement stage, separated from Mu Feng and Zhou Ye's protection, probably won't even make it out of the dark abyss, Lu Qingtian said dismissively. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi were the backbone of the Mu domain, and a Mu Chen? What could he possibly do? Lu Mubai nodded. He had overestimated Mu Chen. Could he really turn the situation around? That was just a pipe dream. Boom. As they spoke, a massive surge of spiritual energy erupted from below. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi were the first to charge out, heading straight for the 3 advanced spirit beasts that were waiting to strike. Mu Feng directly confronted the flame water crane and black iron beast. With his strength at the late divine soul stage, even if he faced 2 opponents at once, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Meanwhile, Zhou Yi, at the early divine soul stage, was evenly matched with the purple-winged lion. The fierce clashes sent shockwaves through the air, and every impact seemed to shake the very atmosphere. Lu Qingtian watched the battle with a sly smile, but his eyes were cold. Go ahead, Mu Feng. Since you're not going to retreat, then you might as well leave your life here. As the battle raged on in the valley, Mu Chen quickly made his way out, climbing onto a rock. His eyes swept across the vast black forest, and with a flick of his wrist, a short flute covered in intricate runes appeared in his hand. Mu Chen held the cold spirit insect flute in his hands, a moment of contemplation flashing in his eyes. Without further hesitation, he placed the flute to his lips, his spiritual energy surging within him as he blew a stream of air into the flute. Mu Chen wasn't a spirit insect master, so he couldn't expertly manipulate the flute. However, he knew the most basic method of using it. If it had been a skilled spirit insect master, they could summon any insect they desired with the flute at will. But Mu Chen wasn't capable of such precision. Fortunately, the largest insect swarm in the dark abyss was the spirit-devouring bees. He hoped that by playing the flute here, he could still attract them, as long as it worked. Woo-woo. As Mu Chen focused, the flute began to glow faintly. The engravings on it twisted and moved, releasing a strange sound wave that traveled from the flute, spreading far and wide. The sound wasn't loud. In fact, it was so subtle that it could easily be overlooked if one didn't listen carefully. Yet Mu Chen knew that the spirit insects were extremely sensitive to such frequencies. He continued to pour his spiritual energy into the flute, ensuring the sound wave kept expanding. Meanwhile, he glanced toward the deeper parts of the dark abyss. The fluctuations in spiritual energy there were growing more violent. It seemed his father and Uncle Zhou had already engaged with the 3 advanced spirit beasts. They had to hurry. A trace of anxiety flashed in Mu Chen's eyes. Those 3 advanced spirit beasts were no joke. The longer his father and the others were entangled with them, the greater the drain on their energy. If this consumption reached a critical point, the Lu domain forces lying in wait would surely make their move. And Mu Chen definitely didn't want to see that happen. The sound of the flute echoed through the air, but there was still no significant movement from the distance. Sweat began to form in the palm of his hand. Could his plan fail? Although he had sounded confident in front of Mu Feng and the others, that was just to reassure them. Mu Chen knew Mu Feng's internal struggle, neither wanting to retreat and let the Lu domain get the 9 nether sparrow, nor wishing to be ambushed by them. Mu Chen had come up with this idea to break the unfavorable situation they were in. But if he couldn't even summon the spirit-devouring bees, his so-called strategy would be rendered useless. Come on, give me a break, Mu Chen muttered to himself. As Mu Chen anxiously waited, time flew by. Nearly 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye, and the fluctuations in the valley became more and more chaotic. The very earth seemed to tremble, signaling that the battle there was reaching a fever pitch. He didn't have much time left. Mu Chen gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to pull away, his gaze suddenly sharpened. Then, a wave of excitement surged through him. They're coming. In the distance, a mass of black clouds rapidly spread across the sky, accompanied by a distinct buzzing sound coming from afar. The spirit-devouring bees had finally been summoned. Suppressing his excitement, Mu Chen quickly stored the flute away and turned, dashing toward the valley. Boom! In the valley, the violent surge of spiritual energy swept through, causing the surrounding mountain walls to tremble, and large rocks continually rolled down. Duan Wei and the others looked grimly at the 2 battle zones in the valley. The 2 figures and 3 beasts had collided fiercely, with spiritual energy radiating outward, shattering the rocks into dust. Damn it! Duan Wei cursed as he observed the stalemate in the battle, then shifted his gaze toward a spot on the mountain wall. A cold, sinister pair of eyes were watching them, clearly pleased with the situation. It seemed that this turn of events had played right into the hands of the Lu domain forces. Has the young master not returned yet? Someone asked, glancing behind them. Duan Wei gave a bitter smile and shook his head. He wasn't sure what Mu Chen was doing, but from his earlier actions, he was sure Mu Chen had a plan. The real question was whether that plan would be enough to break the current deadlock. We'll wait a little longer. If Lu domain dares to make a move, we won't let them off easy either. Duan Wei gritted his teeth. The others nodded, their eyes flashing with fierce intent. Just as they were preparing, a sound came from behind them. They quickly turned around and saw Mu Chen rapidly approaching. Father, Uncle Zhou, fall back. Mu Chen shouted as he glanced at the 2 ongoing battles. Hearing Mu Chen's call, Mu Feng and Zhou Yi, who had been waiting for his signal, immediately retreated at full speed. However, the 3 advanced spirit beasts relentlessly pursued them. Mu Chen watched as the 3 beasts closed in. With a firm grip, he produced a small bottle. As he uncorked it, a peculiar fragrance spread through the air. Bang! With a slap to the bottle, a dark liquid shot out. Mu Chen swiftly waved his hands, unleashing a surge of spiritual energy like a violent storm. The liquid was instantly scattered into a mist of black vapor, which clung to the bodies of the 3 pursuing spirit beasts. However, despite being enveloped in the black mist, the beasts showed no reaction at all. They didn't even acknowledge Mu Chen, whom they considered as insignificant as an ant. Their focus remained solely on Mu Feng and Zhou Yi. Duan Wei and the others, witnessing Mu Chen's bizarre actions, were utterly baffled. Into that rock crevice. Mu Chen pointed toward a fissure in the mountainside and ordered urgently. The group exchanged uncertain glances, but quickly gritted their teeth and obeyed, diving into the crevice. Mu Chen followed closely, while Mu Feng and Zhou Yi brought up the rear. As the last line of defense, the 2 men unleashed their immense spiritual energy, forcibly driving the 3 advanced spirit beasts backward. What are they doing? The Lu domain warriors stared in confusion at Mu domain's retreat into the mountain crevice. Wasn't that a dead end? Had these fools completely lost their minds? Even Lu Qingtian furrowed his brows. With Mu Feng's intelligence, why would he make such a foolish move? Big brother? Lu Ming asked in a low voice, equally perplexed by the situation. Lu Qingtian narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, his expression changed dramatically. His head snapped up toward the valley's entrance, where a buzzing sound had abruptly intensified. That's spirit-devouring bees? Lu Ming and the others also noticed it. Their heads jerked up, and what they saw sent chills down their spines. A massive black cloud was sweeping toward them, blotting out the sky. The deafening buzz reverberated through the valley. Roar! Sensing the approaching swarm, the three advanced spirit beasts let out uneasy growls. Even as formidable as they were, facing such an overwhelming number of spirit-devouring bees was an extreme threat. The black cloud finally descended like a raging tide, pouring into the valley without hesitation. With a terrifying roar, it surged toward the three advanced spirit beasts. Roar! Roar! The beasts, now completely engulfed, thrashed violently. Their rampant spiritual energy exploded outward, killing tens of thousands of spirit-devouring bees in an instant. Yet, for every bee that perished, countless more swarmed in to replace them. Mu Feng and the others watched as the beasts' roars weakened under the suffocating black cloud. A shiver ran down their spines. Slowly, they turned their heads toward the young man standing behind them, Mu Chen, who was flashing them a bright, almost mischievous smile. Was this Mu Chen's plan? But how had he managed to lure the spirit-devouring bees here? And why were they only attacking the three advanced spirit beasts,